sang about a rape in A Man and a Gun, right? We don't want art not to tackle these most difficult subjects in life, but when the artist begins doing these things, that's when it's different.
Mhm. Were you ever threatened for because of your work?
Yeah, this is not something I like to talk about because it sounds like the big bad reporter talking about his adventures. There are people right now, reporters on the ground in Afghanistan and Iraq, wearing flak jackets who are putting their lives on the line. Yeah, I took a bullet through my front window when I lived near Wrigley Field. The day after we wrote about the videotape that surfaced in 2002, I would get calls on a Saturday afternoon. We know you have a 6-year-old daughter. That is melodramatic. That's about me. When I think of the threats that the women who spoke to me have got, uh, that's what really is heroic. I had a newspaper backing me up. The Sun Times paid to replace that window. Okay, I
Mhm.
had legal help. I had editors. I had a support system. These women
Mhm.
stepped forward and told their stories when nobody wanted to listen, and all they got was vilification for it. That's courage. That's true courage.
How many copies has Solace, the case against R. Kelly, sold?
Uh, Far fewer than the two books about Harvey Weinstein. Harvey Weinstein, is the subject of two best-felt bestsellers, one by Ronan Farrow, one by Megan Twohey and Jodi Kantor. People seem to care about his victims much more.
Mhm.
They also won Pulitzers for their work.
Mhm.
It's not about me, though. That's a personal question. I think most authors would have said, but I don't know. I'm too frank for my own good. I don't care. As I yelled at that lawyer when he accused me, Kelly's lawyer, when he accused me of just wanting to sell books, I don't care about the book selling. I would hope the book has a place in libraries like the one here in Northeastern and throughout the U.S. so that when people begin to wonder, how did it happen that the city of Chicago allowed, dozens of young girls to be preyed upon by this monster for 3 decades? How did this happen? Soulless answers that question. And the answer, I'm derailing a book sale right here, perhaps. But no, the answer is everybody failed. Churches, schools, parents, media, everybody failed those young black girls.
We see that, but why is it that Chicago and the state seem to struggle between them for the case?
Well, Kim Fox is a black woman and a sexual assault survivor. She is the state's attorney of Cook County right now. Last year, she watched 6 hours of Surviving R. Kelly, the first 6 episodes, and then she held a press conference and said, uh, if you've been hurt by R. Kelly, you're a woman who's been hurt by R. Kelly, come forward. What gets obscured in the reporting, except for mine, is that two of those women already had tried to press criminal charges. Jerhonda Pace had brought evidence, DNA stained clothing, to the state's attorneys. Lanita Carter, the hair braider, had approached the state's and they would not listen to. Now Kim Fox is a black woman. She's an ambitious politician. She held a press conference. It's exceedingly unusual for a state prosecutor to hold a press conference and ask for witnesses, especially when two of them were already known, should have been known to their office. And she rushed her, this is the language of law enforcement officials who've spoken to me. She rushed the Illinois case, which is about 4 victims, to beat the federal case. Now, there were 3 dozen federal investigators from the Department of Homeland Security, the FBI. There are 2 federal indictments, one from the office in Chicago, one from the office in Brooklyn. To me, those are the more powerful cases because, not to minimize the 4 victims in Kim Fox's case, but the New York and Chicago cases say this was a pattern. This was a gang. This was a crime family like the Gambinos or the Genoveses or a drug operation like El Chapo. And everybody who worked for this man used threats, bribery, and intimidation to allow him to pursue his criminal sexual impulses. Um, that, like I said, in the history of pop music, we've not seen anything like that ever.
So could you delineate for us the charges against him at what level of government and just approximately like what kind of charges R. Kelly faces
There
now?
are two state cases, one in Illinois and one in Minneapolis, Minnesota, for a victim there. There are two federal cases, one based in Chicago, one based in Brooklyn. At some point, those federal cases may well be consolidated. The only trial date so far is for the state of Illinois case in April. The charges include violations of the Mann Act, transporting underage women for sexual purposes across state lines. Ironically, this is what Chuck Berry went to jail for 5 years in the 50s. They include sex with minors. They include making child pornography, because there are apparently 4 videotapes of Kelly now having sex with underage girls, sexual contact.
Underage girls?
Underage girls,
Mhm.
yes. There are charges of bribery, witness intimidation. Um, 2 of his associates, a manager and a right-hand man, are indicted as well. Yeah, I mean, the charges are extensive and far-reaching. You name it, they've thrown it at him.
Hmm. And others in his circle are indicted as well.
Two other people who may well turn on him. I mean, the feds operate by going after the lower level soldier on the street in a mob
And who
family.
are the 2 individuals and their relationship with R. Kelly?
One is known in Kelly's circle as June. He was a right hand man, and the other is a former manager, Darryl McDavid. Very little has been written or reported about those charges.
Have you written or reported about those charges?
I've reported them. I haven't dug into them. I'd like to be not living this story anymore. I've written Soulless. Uh, I think it's important now to move to the next conversation about the art versus the artist. And like I said, there's a legion now of great young reporters at the Tribune, at the Sun Times, for the New York Times in Chicago. I'm gonna let the kids do the heavy lifting, and follow the case as it goes through court.
Does R. Kelly have enough money to adequately defend himself in all of these cases?
And I admit that 19-minute opera that he released on the net, the last piece of substantial new music, he sings, "I am a broke ass legend." I don't believe, and I write this in Solace, that we'd be seeing these charges against him, that we'd be approaching some semblance of justice if he had the money that he had in the 2000s. The reason he's facing his moment of reckoning is he can no longer afford an army of lawyers making $850 an hour. And that's what he had in the 2000s. 4 attorneys at $850 an hour and a small army of legal help backing those attorneys up. He bought justice in 2008. He couldn't afford to post bond the first 2 times he was arrested in 2019. First on the Illinois charges, then on failure to pay child support. It took him 3 or 4 days in both cases to come up with bond. Now, the federal charges have him in prison. He's in a federal prison now, holding. They are not even posting bail. So he's done. He's really done. He's never going to breathe fresh air again.
Do you know anything about his life in jail, how the inmates are treating him?
No, there hasn't been a lot of that, and what there has been is like reporting by TMZ. So who knows if it's made up or not? He has been reluctant to leave his jail cell to appear at court appearances, which I find interesting. I don't know if it's because he is staying in his cell worried that other prisoners may hurt him, or he just doesn't care, or he's given up. Who knows? And frankly, I don't care. It's never been about him. It's always for me been about the women.
Of those 48 women, do you know how many of them have gone on to for the better now, or how many of them are still truly suffering?
A lot of them are confused, depressed, hurt, angry. I was talking to 2 in the last couple of days. They have a hard time, and every time something like Surviving R. Kelly airs or a big news story happens, it comes up again. It's not like they can move on
Mhm.
because society keeps pushing it in their face.
And some of them are not as strong as Tiffany Watkins.
No, no, Tiffany's an extraordinarily strong woman, a strong case. But, she is now dealing with the incredible media blowback of having finally told her story for a television camera as opposed to just talking to me. Um, you see it in the statements Dominique Gardner gave me when, after 9 months, I never chased Dominique Gardner. She would text, she would email, she would call and say, I'm thinking about telling my story. And I would say, when you are ready, I will listen and I will do it right. She did that for the New Yorker in like March of last year. And then she talked for Surviving. She's conflicted. I loved him and he loved me. Yes, he would hit me with an extension cord. Yes, he would choke me. Yes, he would beat me. Yes, he would lock me up. But I loved him and he loved me, Jim. And when it was great, it was amazing. That's not uncommon. If you talk to police officers who respond to a domestic abuse call, they can show up at a doorway and the man can be there sweating, foaming at the mouth, and the woman can be battered, bleeding, and bruised. And she'll often say it was all just a big misunderstanding. Nothing happened. This is common, and I'm out of my depth here. I've talked to dozens of domestic abuse advocates and lawyers, counselors and therapists, and then the sexual abuse experts. We have great groups here in Chicago. Resilience is one of them who do this work. Who
So there are individuals who are helping these women, or are they?
Yes, yes. I To the extent that they want help, some of them are like, I don't want to talk about it, and others are getting therapy. You're talking about 48 women. There's 48 different complicated stories, and what is the case Monday morning can change Tuesday afternoon. They're trying to live their lives, and I admire them. I admire their courage. Are these perfect people? No. You want to pick apart any of them, but they're like, who among us is?
Is there anything that our listeners could do to help these women?
I think the important thing moving forward is to raise awareness because this could also be the gym coach, the Nasser story, right? This could be the bus driver. This could be the pastor. We know there are plenty of Catholic priests, right? I think women have to advocate for themselves and for children fearlessly throughout society. I mean, that's what Me Too is about. And I say that as a 55-year-old fat white rock critic. This is not my fight. This is the fight. Well, this is the fight of every human being who cares. But also, I mean, it's time to listen to women. It's time to believe women. When I think about have we made progress, Nirvana's Nevermind had not yet come out when a brilliant woman named Dr. Anita Hill testified for Congress. She was not believed when Clarence Thomas was named to the Supreme Court. A brilliant woman like Dr. Ford, Christine Blasey Ford, testified to Congress last summer. She was not believed, and Justice Kavanaugh sits on the Supreme Court. Those two judges will now decide your right to decide what to do with your body, and my daughter's right at age 22. And that bugs the blank out of me. It really does.
I was just thinking that there might be some listeners who actually want to help these women, like to get a job and improve their futures. Is there any way that a listener could really help these women?
You know, Groups like Resilience are looking all the time for volunteers. They sit with victims of sexual assault as they file their police charges, as they are taken to the hospital, and the rape kit is administered. I mean, they're doing, I don't believe in God, but they're doing God's work. And they do education in the schools. There are groups that are out there doing important stuff, and not just for the victims of famous people like R. Kelly, for everybody.
Mhm.
Women of color and black women and white women, and also trans people, because that's a whole other frontier. The great story, the horrifying stories, the tidal wave of assaults of on trans people of color. It's yeah, it's depressing. But then we have music. Let's talk about how great that Lizzo record is.
Yes. Well, why don't you just, since we have you here, describe what inspired you to create this record with your group, and then your career as a drummer?
Ah, well, career's a funny word. I've always played drums. I'm not a musician. I'm a drummer, but a bunch. That's a joke. Um, and you know, I mean, I'm in a punk rock band called Vortis. But now Vortis has some academic underpinnings. The Vorticist movement was a group of intellectuals in England in World War I who perpetuated the notion of it was our responsibility to perpetuate violent structures of adolescent clarity throughout life. What the hell's that mean? Live like a teenager with that lust for life, no matter how old you are. James Joyce, Wyndham Lewis, Ezra Pound, before he became a fascist. And so we take our name from that Vorticist movement, and we play punk rock, and it's like 18 songs in 25 minutes. No stage patter. It's like the express train coming at your forehead.
Thank you so much, Jim DeRogatis, author of
Solus, the case against R. Kelly.
I wanted to show the cover.
Oh, show the where is it?
Yes.
Oh yeah, Aaron's got the book. Well, I'm not supposed to mention the wizard's name.
Here we go. Solus, the case against R. Kelly. Thank you so much for joining us on Wizard with our special guest, author Jim DeRogatis. Have a great day, and this is Wizard Chicago 88.3 FM.